Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Online Smicha. In this week's Perek, in Perkei Avos, in Mishnah Beis, Rabbi Chanina Skan HaKohanim Omer, Rabbi Chanina the Skan HaKohanim, the assistant to the Kohen Gadol, and there's a nice shot from Rabbi Meir Shapiro from Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin that he says, why is he titled Skan HaKohanim, plural, not Skan HaKohen Gadol? And he says, because if you look up in the history in that time, the Kohanim Gedolim were changing non-stop because of their misqualifications. So it became Sgan HaKohanim. Rabbi Chanina Sgan HaKohanim used to say, have a mispalel b'shloime shel malchus. Pray for the peace of the government. Shelu mali meira. If people not afraid of the government, ish esre'eyu chayim bloi. They would swallow each other alive. Now, it's interesting that, as the Rebbe notes, that Rabbi Chanina Sgan HaKohanim is the one that says this. Rabbi Chanina, this great Rabbi Chanina, was one of the Asara Arugei Malchus, one of the 10 martyrs that died of Kiddush Hashem by the Goyim. And he is the one that says, have a mispalo b'shloime shel malchus. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah goes on to explain what does it mean, ish esre'eyu chayim b'loi, that a person would swallow his friend like fish, a big fish swallowing a smaller fish. And the Gemara goes on to give different explanations how that lifestyle is like fish in water. But I want to show you how something which seems to be common sense, simple. Obviously, pray for the welfare of the government. We need law and order. We don't need Mishagayim running around doing things. What's the big Kiddush here in this halacha? So perhaps I'll introduce the Kiddush based on what Rabbeinu Yoina says. Rabbeinu Yoina says, Zeh Inyan, the point of this statement of Rabbi Chanina Sgan HaKohanim, writes Aleimar, he wants to tell us, Sheyesh la'adam lehispalel al shloim kol ha'olam, that there is an obligation for man, for a yid, to daven on the welfare of the whole world. And feel bad for just anybody who's going through a terrible time. You feel bad for anybody. And he says that's the way, the behavior of tzaddikim, and he proves it from a pasuk in Tehillim, that David HaMelech felt that way. In other words, says Rabbeinu Yoina, a person shouldn't only pray for his personal needs. There is a point that you daven for just everybody in the world. Sheyamdu b'shalom. There should be peace in the world. When the governments have peace, when the governments are strong, yesh shalom la'olam. There will be peace in the world. Okay, also makes sense. Obviously, if there's peace and amongst the governments, the world will be a safer place. There is a halacha discussion here. If you pay attention to when you bench, Birchas HaMazon, in Birchas HaMazon we see that sometimes when you give a bracha, you say towards the end of the harachamons, you say a bracha for your family, for your household, for your parents. The bracha specifically excludes that non-Jews you're not allowed to give a bracha to. You only give the bracha to B'nai Bris, to the Jewish people. There is a lengthy discussion in Poskim when it comes to Rosh Hashanah. And in Rosh Hashanah we're davening for the welfare, for everything. It's the Yom Hadin. So in Siman Taf Kuf Tzadik Zayin, Taf Kuf Tzadik Aleph, the Alter Rebbe discusses that there's a quote in the davening that we say, V'akedas Yitzchak, and the Akedah, the great Akedah, the great test of the Akedah that Avram did with Yitzchak, please Hashem, L'zaroi shel Yaakov Hayoim Tizkar. You should keep that as a plus for his sons Yaakov. The question is, do you have to say Yaakov, or have it as a plus, as a benefit, as a schus for Yitzchak's sons? If you don't clearly say Yaakov, Yitzchak also had a son Esav. And that means you're asking for a blessing not only for Jews, but even lahavdil non-Jews, Esav. And when you say it so broad, you also have another problem. There are certain nations that the Torah says, Timcha Zecher Amalek. How could you just bless and be concerned about the whole world when certain parts of them, the Torah says they should be eliminated? They're evil parts. So there is many parts of this discussion. The Alter Rebbe discusses this in Siman Tov Kuf Tzadik Aleph. And there is an issue of loisei chanim. The Torah says you're not allowed to show favoritism, you're not allowed to show grace to a guy. There's a story that's brought so much to prove this halacha that the Brisker Rav, when he went to, I think it was to Switzerland for healing or whatever, he made sure to ask what is the custom in that city where he was going. Do you give tips to those who ride the taxis or whatever? Because he felt that if he would give extra money as a tip, that would be over loisei chanim. We are not allowed to show grace. Now, so there is a mix-up here. The Beis HaMikdash is called Ki Beisi Beis Tefillah Yikarei L'chol Ha'amim. So all nations could pray to Hashem, and the Beis HaMikdash is a house of prayer L'chol Ha'amim. At the same time, it says a Yid is not allowed to show favoritism, not allowed to show grace to a guy, and we see in Birchas Hamazon you're not allowed to give a bracha to a guy. And at the same time, we see have a mispalo b'shleim shel malchus. For the peace and the welfare of the government, you're allowed to pray. So this is a lengthy discussion if it depends on a bracha, a blessing, or versus a tefillah, a prayer. We know that we say Hanoisein Shual HaMalachim is a prayer that we say that Hashem is the one that gives help to the kings, not necessarily only Jewish kings, and we pray for them. So this is a discussion which is discussed in the halacha how this is allowed to be done. Yet Reb Chanina Sgan HaKohanim clearly says have a mispalo b'shleim shel malchus.